what's really on the inside. All your insecurities, all the dirty laundry, never made me blink one time. Unconditional, unconditionally, I will love you unconditionally. There is no fear now. Let go and just be free. I will love you unconditionally. Come just as you are to me. Don't need apologies. Know that you are worthy. I'll take your bad days with your good. Walk through the storm, I would. I'd do it all because I love you. And I love you unconditional, unconditionally. I will love you unconditionally. There is no fear now. Let go and just be free. I will love you unconditionally. Open up your heart and just let it begin. Open up your heart and just let it begin. Open up your heart and just let it begin. Open up your heart. Acceptance is the key to be truly free. Will you do the same for me? Unconditional, unconditionally, I will love you unconditionally. There is no fear now. Let go and just be free. I will love you unconditionally. I will love you unconditionally. And I will love you unconditionally.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. We are in the series finale of Own Your Story, which has been such a unique exploration that we've all kind of come together and not only listen to different folks share their stories, but then sit in discussion groups, let more of yourself be known to others. So thank you everyone for participating. And really, just as that video shared, our stories are in so many ways defined by our relationships. That was actually Ram Dass. And I love what he shared about relationships being like a yoga. In a lot of ways, our relationships can be our spiritual practice. For some of us, it might be the ultimate spiritual practice of our lives, to kind of surrender to the work and the ability to grow ourselves through our relationships. And so for our series finale of Own Your Story, I wanted to talk about that and to really look at the story of a relationship. Before we do that, though, I just want to add one quick logistic thing. A couple of weeks ago, we had our annual meeting, and at the annual meeting, I stood on stage and I really impassionately shared with you how, I want to not only get to know you all better, but I want to create more opportunities for you all to serve and to get involved. And I said, email me, reach out to me via email. I would love to talk to you, and that is the best way to get a hold of me. Then I realized that I gave everyone the wrong email. I don't know. Sometimes you just got to look at yourself in the mirror and just give yourself a little nod and go, that happened. And we're just going to move forward. So if you emailed me after that meeting and you were like, I didn't hear back from him, and he really made a point to say that he was going to get back to me, that was why. So I just want to put my email out again, jhaber@loveperiod.org. So if you emailed jake@loveperiod.org, there's another Jake in another part of the country at another loveperiod.org that got that, and he'll be happy to help. So anyway, sorry about that. This series has been about the significance of really certain moments in our life. Every person that shared really shared about these pivotal moments, parts of their story that really shaped who they were spiritually and as people. And what happens when we tell our story to one another is we zoom out, and often it's only when we zoom out or when we look back that we can see the significance and the importance of certain points in our lives. Sometimes the things that when we're in them seem like the most difficult and the thing that we just wish we could get out of it and get rid of it, it actually is the thing in that moment that really brought us where we needed to be. So I want to thank all of our sharers and our storytellers for doing that. And something we did last week, if you weren't here, is we had a response time where I invited us all to write down on a piece of paper what one of those moments might look like for us. A moment that brought us into ourselves, a moment that really shaped our story, maybe in ways that we didn't realize until much later. A moment that brought us face to face with the divine. Some of these moments are simple moments. Some of these moments are heavy moments. And I just wanted to take a minute, and as a way to kind of wrap up this series, I just wanted to share a couple of those with you, that these are your stories. This is who we are as a community. This is you, Aldea. This is us. So I just wanted to share a couple of these. A significant memory for me was when I met my birth aunt. I was adopted, and it was so validating to be accepted by a member of my birth family. When I read this, what will you do with your one wild and precious life? Sadness to anger to forgiveness. I remember Mom and I sitting with Dad as he was lying there dying, and then only 2 years later, it was just me sitting there with Mom as she lay dying, honoring her life. I will always remember our first Christmas Eve service in Minnesota. I was holding all three of my boys, my baby on my shoulder, my middle son on my lap, my oldest on the seat next to me. I had arms so full of little boys and a heart so full of love. I didn't know it was possible to hold so many babies and so much love. Sunlight dancing on ocean waves. When my mother died, God was so present everywhere. God was speaking to us all of only love. I went through a period of my life that I call anger begets anger. The only way I came out of that period was to develop a practice I call 3 little things. Every time I felt anger bubble up within me, I reframed my thoughts by 3 little things I was grateful for. These are just examples of all the different journeys that we go on to become who we are. And so thank you so much for sharing. And I want to close this series in a different way. As a community, we are a place for people of diverse faiths and spirituality to come together. And what's beautiful about what happens here at Aldea is this isn't just a place for coexistence. Now, I do like that sticker. I remember when I was growing up, I'd see the coexist sticker, and I used to think that was bad. And then I I was like, uh-oh. And then now I'm like, oh, the coexist sticker, cool, you know. I like how I still look at it and I'm like, I like how they figured out how to make every religious symbol a letter. That is cool. But I think we kind of go a step further, in the sense that to coexist is to say, I can respect what you believe and you can respect what I believe, and certainly that happens here. But I think something else happens here, that not only do we coexist, but we connect. That we can sit in these discussion groups and you don't just say, oh, you believe that and that's interesting and that works for you. But often, even if you're sitting across from someone who has a spirituality that looks vastly different than yours, often we can learn from each other. Often we can find new insights from the way that they see, and we realize how connected we actually are. So we're not just coexisting, but we're connecting. But how does that happen inside of a relationship? You know, the type of church that I grew up in, it would have been unheard of for a couple to be of 2 different faiths, because, you know, in that context, that we were told that would create all kinds of problems. They called it being unequally yoked. And, and so that was what I thought for many years, until I met my friends Carl and Marni, and they showed me what it could mean to be a couple in what you might think of as an interfaith relationship. And it taught me a lot about really the truth that we all bring our own spirituality and we all bring our own uniqueness to the table in any relationship. But I think it would be great for you to meet them. So would you welcome Carl and Marni to the stage? That's for you and that's for you. So I know you two very well, but I don't think they do. So you want to just, that one's for her. Oh, you're so nice. You're such a gentleman. Why don't you just briefly tell us, share who you are?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Marni, and we hail from the Seattle area, where yeah, where it's about 30 degrees right now. So we're happy to be here.
Yep. Hi, I'm Carl.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, I don't know. You want more?
Yeah. Well, I've known them for a long time. I met Carl and Marni at a church that I worked at 5 years ago, and just really one of those friendships that even as I move, now they come to visit me, and so it's a really, you know, and us, me and Olivia and them have they've been really a rock for us, and so I wanted to give them the opportunity just to share some unique journey that they've been on in their relationship. And really, as you've described it to me, it began from the beginning and has been kind of this ongoing thing that you two came into the relationship from vastly different spiritual backgrounds. And that certainly would have informed the way that you looked at each other, the way that you looked at the relationship as a whole. So maybe, you know, for the first decade or two, give us a picture of what that looked like. That, you know, maybe we can start with Marni and where she was at spiritually, and then with you where you were out spiritually, and how did that affect the way that you saw the other person?
Yeah. Well, we were friends first, which, you know, I just really respected Carl and his way of being in the world. For me personally, I wouldn't say I had a faith or a religion. I knew what I didn't believe in. I wasn't sure, yeah. I wasn't sure that I needed to name it, and I wasn't sure what it was. But I had a clear feeling inside of what didn't resonate with me. But yeah, I was fairly naive when it came to religion and the various, Catholic and, all the various religions. And so I think that turned out to be beneficial for our relationship. But yeah, I didn't like to label. I didn't, people would ask, are you an atheist? Are you this? Are you, everybody wanted to know what I was, what I believed in. They wanted to label it. And I would just say, I don't know. And nobody seemed to like that. But for me, I didn't seem to fit in a category. And I still don't label it. So.
Yeah, I was raised Catholic, and then got all the way up to confirmation, and I remembered sitting there with my mom and the priest, and they asked me if I wanted to become a member of the church, and I had never been like, I get to decide? Because we had to go to church every Sunday. I played hockey. You have a game Saturday, Sunday, can't play on Sunday, so we had to go to church, and I have to miss that game, and it's just you had to go, right? It was an obligation, and I always believed in God for as long as I can remember, and I got to that point, and I thought, well, I get to decide. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I don't want to do this anymore, And my mom was shocked, and I was just like, well, this is great. I'm out, And, but after that, I went to college, and I remembered feeling like I wanted something, and I did want to explore my relationship with God, and I had a really good mentor there that went to like a Lutheran church, and then, anyway, I got into the evangelical kind of faith, right, where I was like, yeah, it's about God and love, and not about this obligation to just have to go to church. So that felt more natural and felt like, okay, yeah, we can all have our own relationship with God. And then Marni and I met, and I did have that feeling Jake mentioned of being unequally yoked. We created a life together pretty early on in our relationship, and so I was going to have a son, and was trying to figure out, oh my gosh, what do I do? And I was like, I think maybe I love her, but I mean, she doesn't even believe in God. I don't know what to do, and so. My mantra became sort of like, I need to be the best, example of Jesus, of Christianity, of that I can be, so that she sees that and it's attractive to her and she wants it. And I didn't feel that burden of like, I've got to change her, but just like, this just needs to look like a really loving, good person where she thinks, oh, I want what he has. That was my goal, was thinking, I just need to be really attractive in my faith. And it really forced me to think, I really see how I wasn't good at it. Like, I kept failing all the time, right? And I kept having to ask forgiveness, but I thought, well, then she'll see what asking forgiveness is like, and so that's good. But then I just kept feeling like, how do I stop messing up so she doesn't think this thing is, lame because I'm not doing it right. And so like, no, it's not bad. It's good. People are good and loving, So I always wanted to try to be the best person I could be, so that Marni thought, oh, Christians are good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, and thankfully you didn't have this deep existential fear and dread of I have to convert her. But there is still some sort of implicit sense that I do need to present a certain way. Not that you were faking it, but I want, the goal, or it would be really great if she came over to my side. Yeah. Maybe there were times where you felt like, it'd be really just much easier if he came over a little bit more onto my side. So I'm sure at some point, did it create a little bit of a sense of conflict or tension, or wow, does this person see the world the same way that I do?
Well, I felt from the beginning that Carl was so open to all different ideas, and that's what I love about him. He can put him in a room full of people of all different faiths, of all different backgrounds, and he's just open and receptive. So even to my ideas, he was open and receptive. Never seemed like he was trying to convince me otherwise. If I said, hey, read this passage in this book that I'm reading, Eckhart Tolle or, any of those, he would read it and he would go, oh, well, that makes sense too, So I just loved that he was always so open to learning and to kind of expanding his idea of faith. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate that. Thank you. I mean, that was always the goal, because I kept thinking, what does love look like, right? And I think it looked so open, and it looked very much like that you wouldn't say, I'm going to close down, but yet I still felt like I had it figured out, right? Like I believed that God sent his son, and I accepted him, and that's the way that you get to heaven. And I just thought, well, somewhere along the way she'll want that. So I did have some conflict. I played drums for church, and I'd go on Sunday, and she was fine with me bringing our kids. And, I think I wanted them to have that. And I used to remember we'd drive in the car, and I'd say, the most important thing, what is it, kids? I just always drilled into them, it's Jesus in your heart, right? That's just it. Because I thought, if you have that, then all the other decisions, what you do, if you go to church, don't go to church, whatever, at least you've got this solid kind of example of a person of love in your heart. And I did want Marni to have that, and I'd feel like, oh, she doesn't have that. And so, we had everything else, but then sometimes I'd go to church, and she's like, yeah, I don't want to go. And I felt like, oh, we're not the model couple, right? Like, I'm just taking the kids, and I'd be at church thinking, oh, people wonder, like, no, I have a wife, she's just not here. And so for me, there was a little bit of difficulty in the sense that I wanted it to seem like I had it all worked out. But I thought, yeah, but I love Marni, and I think this is great, and God's just doing his timing with Marni, right? So I don't know what that is, and that's not up to me, so that's fine. But once in a while, I did feel like appearance-wise, I wanted it to look more like, oh, we show up with their family and the wife and husband and the kids, and we're all coming to church together. And so, yeah, I felt that sometimes when I was always at church by myself.
I hope maybe what you might be experiencing hearing this story is the realization that whether or not you've had something similar in your life, a similar dynamic, or maybe you were that couple that you did show up to church on Sunday and present it as though, yeah, I mean, we're on the same page. Either way, we are vast, unique universes inside of ourselves, right? It's been said that the greatest distance in the world is between any two human hearts, and that we're so unique. There's so much that makes you, that makes you special. And so in any relationship, there's still going to be a universe of uniqueness, whether or not you share the same faith. And as time goes on, if you make space for that, that's just going to naturally reveal itself. Now, for you, it was externalized in such a way that you were forced to really look at it. And so over time, I can imagine, or I guess I know the plot because I know you. Over time, I can only surmise that would have begun to shift, because over time you just start to see that other person, and you realize not only are they coming from a different place, but there are things about where they're at that can benefit me. And I've seen the way that the place where I'm at can benefit them. And you, in a way, you come together and you find something that's uniquely you. And it's a meld that happens. And so, especially in the last handful of years, what does that look like for you two?
I mean, I got to break this pattern here, just because it just reminded me that I really started to see Marni as one of the best examples of a Christian I had known. She's so giving, so loving, joining groups, helping people, reminding me, like, no, we should do this. I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess, I mean, like, because I was just typical male. I don't know, I guess, like, not to, sorry, guys, but, like, but, I mean, I kind of, she was the one saying, we should go here. Let's go serve at this thing. Hey, let's mentor this young boy who needs help. I signed up for this mentoring. He's coming this weekend. That's what we're going to do on Saturday. And I was just like, she's telling me she's showing me how I'm supposed to be. I read the book several times, and then, but she's just living it and doing it. And my brain started to shift, like, wait a minute. I'm the one with Jesus in my heart. I'm the one, and then I'm thinking, like, but she's living the way you're supposed to be living. So I just started to change, and I just started to see that, like, man, she gets it already through whatever she's reading or whatever she's doing. She's already living the way you're supposed to live. I know God sees that. So I really lost that sense of, she needs to say the words, put the hand on the thing, do the stuff, that I just thought she just needs to keep being her, and I need to watch that, and I need to get some of that into me so that, that's what started to change for me. I started to lose that sense of thinking, I hope she comes to my side, and more feeling like, I gotta, I have a great example of how I should be right next to me,
So my plan worked. I won. No, there was a lot, like Jake was saying, it was, give and take. It was a relationship, and there was a lot I learned from Carl as well, and his faith, and things like tithing, and I know it seems like I was shocked to find out how much money he was giving to the church. That was one thing that was very uncomfortable for me after we were married, and then I realized, you give how much to the church, to this one organization? But then I got the hang of it, and I gave to all the organizations that I loved and cared about deeply. And I thought, this is so wonderful to do that first, to be that giving. And there were other good examples, but that's just one that through the years, things like that, where I've learned from his example. So it's gone both ways.
Wow, when you were speaking, it made me think about something that really shifted for me. One of the first things that really shifted for me as my faith began to shift was this sense that, okay, there are people out there that don't identify as Christian. They don't identify in this way that I grew up identifying, and yet their life exemplifies the way of Jesus more than so many of the people that I know and that I'm sitting next to who do identify. And so I began to question, well, is it important how you think of yourself, or is it important how you live? And that really was something that shifted me quite a bit. And I think for you too, you also have this added pressure within the context of this relationship. You have kids. And as you all know, that's a whole other dynamic of how to encourage and invite to participate in a spirituality and yet not to put any pressure. What did that look like for you raising kids kind of in this diverse ecosystem of your relationship?
Yeah, I grew up, my grandparents were actually really involved Christians. They were members of the church, and like when they died, they donated everything to the church. And so they were really involved. So I did go to like Sunday school, and I was given access to those things, but my parents just told me, we want you to know these things, but you get to choose, And so I wanted that for my kids as well. So I liked that they had access to Christianity and with Carl, and they knew how he felt, and they knew how I felt, and then they got to choose. And our daughter really kind of wanted, to go with Carl a lot, and wanted that. She wanted to know that God was there, that that safety was there. And our son was like, I'm fine, I'm good, And they're still pretty much that way. But I just wanted them to be able to have access to different ways of thinking and believing, and to choose for themselves when they were ready. So.
Yeah, and I really wanted them to have that core. I for sure did not want them to think you had to go to church, because just being raised Catholic, I thought, I want you to want to go. I mean, I like the music, as a drummer and that. I mean, I was really into the music, and hey, every week you get to see this live music, and you learn something, and
the music,
and the music, yeah, and so I really wanted them to go. But if they were like, oh, I don't want to go, I definitely kind of swayed to, like, well, come on, it'll be fun. I didn't want to just like, okay, whatever you want. I tried to kind of, well, yeah, we should go. Let's do it. It'll be great, and maybe I did some things like you going out to eat afterwards or whatever, where it's like, isn't this a fun thing, that we get to do? And it's a good thing. It's not an obligation. It's not, and it helps you in life, and it's just once a week. And so I guess I was always trying to make it seem fun and attractive. But then if they really didn't want to go or whatever, I'm like, hey, that's fine. No big deal. Like, let's not worry about it. And I thought, because that's what I hated, was that you had to go no matter what. But I do feel like they came, I was always infusing into them this sense of, if you can just grab that it's Jesus in your heart, which again, I think my metaphor now, it's just love in your heart. Just what does love look like? If you can just always be thinking it's, how do I just have love in my heart? Then it's okay if you don't, do all the other stuff. You don't, what church you go to, what you believe in, all that. And I just felt like, if you can just know that love's the point of it all. And I love that you guys have that love period. I mean, that is where I've landed for sure after all these years. And I think they picked up on that.
Yeah. Really coming back to that central idea from the video right before the message, whether it's with kids, whether it's any kind of relationship, friendships, family, your spouse or partner, the more that we push up against them, trying to control and trying to force them to be some version of what we think they should be in order to serve our needs, the more that they will push right back. We all know this. And yet the more acceptance we give, the more space we create, the more love, unconditional, open, accepting love that we invite them into, the more that the relationship becomes a vehicle for freedom. It becomes a vehicle for growth, and for you to see the divine in one another. And so I see that in your story, and I just want to reflect that back to you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I want to give a round of applause, everybody. We're really quickly, you can stay. We're going to transition into discussions. And so if you're new with us, this is just the way that we kind of close our time together through just sharing a little bit about what maybe we were prompted to think about through the message. So if you're in a seat and you want to find maybe a group of 3 or 4 or more, or if you're at the tables, you want to add to the tables, however you want to do that. This time is your own to discuss, and the questions are this. First, have you ever had an interfaith or interspiritual relationship of any kind, friendship, family, love, partnership, spouse, and what did you learn from that? And the second is, what can it look like to maintain an emotional connection among differences? When I listen to their story, I hear that throughout having these, certain ideological differences, there was always an emotional connection there. And that's gonna be some of the greatest challenge of our life, is to figure out how to maintain connected to someone even when there's differences, because there will always be differences. Getting rid of them is not the point. Learning how to stay connected through them is the point. So why don't you take these next 10 minutes and discuss with one another?